I'm Colin Sanders. This is the History Books Review, and this is the latest instalment of my extended review of Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Chapter 47 is a weird one for the modern reader. Gibbon chooses to give us an account of the religious controversies in the Christian churches of the late Roman Empire. This is not something that fits our way of looking at things. We tend to regard the religious backgrounds to conflicts as relevant and interesting in as far as they illuminate the history of the time, but we would regard the actual content of the debates as something that belongs in the study of religion. Religion has become for us a separate subject. It's still important. There are many people who still take spiritual issues seriously, but we no longer regard them as central to our public space. When Gibbon broke off the narrative to talk about Roman law for a chapter, that made perfect sense. When he does the same for religion, it seems a bit odd. But the oddness continues when we read it, because this is like no other account you'll ever have read. There is little doubt in my mind that Gibbon was an atheist. This is made clear on several occasions in his writing. The most poignant is where he writes about the death of a friend. He describes how he said goodnight to him for the last time before he went to bed, where he died in his sleep. But, unlike just about every other writer of his time, he does not add, in this world. He believed that they parted company forever. So, just how he managed to concentrate on the obscure and trivial matters that troubled the early Christians' attempts to interpret their faith is hard to fathom. Almost uniquely in this work, this chapter is really rather poor. The writing is not up to Gibbon's usual standard, although it does have its moments. The narrative flow is erratic, and some of it we've heard before. I can't be sure, but I wonder if the tone is to do with the reaction he had got to earlier volumes, where Christianity is not shown in the noble light that was expected in his time. Was he maybe attempting to justify his earlier scepticism by doubling down on how bad Christianity was? If so, I think it succeeds. Religion is inseparable from power. The priest in every age and every cult needs to convince his flock that at the very least they should provide him with subsistence. Done well, it can be the source of a tidy living. The laws of supply and demand apply as much to this field of human activity as any other. So competitors for pious donations have to work up a unique offering to differentiate themselves from one another. Hence, heresies, schisms, and interdenominational conflict. Once the state also starts getting involved, a river of blood becomes inevitable. My cynical take on this whole subject would not raise any eyebrows today, and even religious people are often quite happy to acknowledge the shortcomings of the organisations that have to struggle to operate in a fallen world. It wasn't quite like that in Gibbon's day, and he takes all the twists and turns very seriously. I'm going to try and just tease out the bits that really matter. The interesting thing about Christian heresies is there is just so many of them. Gibbon gives the details of a reasonable number, and I remember thinking when I first read this chapter that I really ought to write them all down on index cards to try and keep track of them. I didn't actually do so, but I do remember once in my early 20s getting stuck at St Pancras station in central London for a couple of hours. In those days there was a large public library very close to the station, and I wandered in and found myself in the philosophy and religion section. I think the books were arranged in numerical order of the Dewey system, where theology had quite a low number. Not wanting to waste the time on anything trivial, I decided I would start a new Christian heresy. There hadn't been a new one for quite a long time, and it sounded like a fun project. So I started looking, trying out the various permutations of the nature of the divinity of Christ. I have to say, I could not find one new option. Everything I could think of had already been proposed by somebody, usually somebody from before the 4th century. Most of them had a name, and many of them had been suppressed by the authorities. I now think that every heresy that could be imagined has already been done. In the next episode, we'll look at someone who did his best to get rid of heretics, the highly dangerous St. Cyril of Alexandria, mad, bad, and dangerous to get into a theological argument with. Until then, thanks for listening.